Now let's turn to our third panelist, Senator Golden from Philippines.
Thank you very much, Professor Xiao Duan Wang Hawang, and also good morning to all our fellow panelists and also the guests from different countries. And congratulations to Taiwan for hosting this wonderful, meeting. Let me just go direct to the point. The Constitution of the Philippines, in distributing the powers of government, creates three distinct and separate departments: the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. This separation is not merely a matter of convenience, as we all know, or of government mechanism. The necessity of reciprocal checks on the exercise of political power by dividing and distributing it into different depositaries and constituting each the guardian of the public will against invasions by the others, some of them in our country and under our own eyes. To preserve them must be therefore necessary as to institute them. The need for checks of one great department by the others has become even more acute in our time. The rise of populist leaders throughout the world who try again and again to erode traditional and constitutional balance, attempting to arrogate upon themselves powers and privileges constitutionally allocated to other departments, does not augur well for our future. Now is a time better than any of those of us upon whom our laws have assigned mandates and duties to perform to ensure that the balance is maintained, and where the balance is skewed, to ensure that the balance is restored. The consequences for inaction can be dire. Presidential or executive abuse of his or her powers is tolerated than normalized, paving the way for seditious conduct among his minions, acolytes, and sycophants, and a creeping but inexorable march to authoritarianism thus becomes inevitable. An event not unlike the January 6th sedition and insurrection at the U.S. Capitol by people who could not accept the election results will become commonplace. Therefore, a rule of law, predictable, consistent, transparent, with continuity, and applicable to all equitably, is ever our moral imperative. The power of congressional oversight. Under a constitution, Congress may conduct inquiries in aid of legislation in accordance with its duly published rules of procedure. And therefore, the thrust of the legislative oversight stems principally from the power of the purse of government. This is just one facet. Did the departments spend the money according to the purpose of appropriation? Did the departments ensure that there was no wastage in how the money was spent? Did they ensure that none of the money was improperly spent? Did they ensure that no single dollar or peso was stolen and went into the pockets of corrupt public officers? Did the departments file cases against erring public officers? As one of 24 senators elected at large by the whole country and as chairman of the Committee on Public Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, or the Blue Ribbon Committee, we are tasked to perform the act of protecting the Senate, of protecting the institutions of the Constitution, maintaining our duty to balance the powers, and most importantly, of ultimately protecting the people from corruption, rapacity, and abuse of power, which run counter sometimes to presidential acts. We act not merely to assert our constitutional prerogatives, but also to ensure that the balance of power remains stable, which is the very essence of democracy. Our rules of the Senate provides that the Committee in Aid of Legislation shall have jurisdiction over all legislative matters relating to, including investigation of malfeasance, misfeasance, and nonfeasance in office by officers and employees of the government, its branches, agencies, and subdivisions and instrumentalities. Implementation of the provision of the Constitution on nepotism and investigation of any matter of public interest or its own initiative or brought to its attention by any member of the Senate. Our Supreme Court, in a number of cases, such as Senate versus Hermita, Savio versus Gordon, Standard Chartered Bank versus Enrile, and other cases, has long since upheld the principle and its agreement with Congress that the investigatory power is so essential to the legislative functions as to be implied from the general vesting of legislative power in Congress. The power of inquiry is an essential and appropriate auxiliary to the legislative function. There are but a few exceptions: executive privilege regarding national security, presidential private communication, diplomatic negotiations, and even the power for contempt to put people in contempt for not cooperation has also been upheld by the Supreme Court, which means we can put under contempt somebody who is very, very uncooperative until the lifetime of the current Congress. The Blue Ribbon Committee can motu proprio or on its own initiative investigate so-called government malpractices. Other committees need to be authorized by the Senate in order to conduct an investigation. But that is easier said than done. In the performance of our functions, many obstacles are put in place by those who investigate: non-cooperation, refusal to submit documents, refusal of involved persons to appear, among others. Worse is what we currently face, where the President himself, by executive fiat, has barred the presence of officials and employees of the Executive Department in our investigation hearings, a matter that is pending in the Supreme Court right now. A case in point is the current investigation we're pursuing against Pharmaly Corporation, a corporation that has been in the Taiwanese papers recently, whose members are also part of a Pharmaly corporation in the Philippines that supplied overpriced supplies, masks, face shields, test kits, and other materials needed in our struggle against COVID-19. We discovered that not only were the suppliers overpriced or defective, billions of pesos of contracts were awarded to this corporation, even if its capitalization was only $12,390 US. And due to our assertion, directors of the involved corporations, siblings, their guardians were, after a long search, arrested in Davao City, hometown of the president, where they probably felt safe, far from our reach. And as we began discovering more irregularities and anomalies, involvement of the president's very close Chinese citizens from the People's Republic of China, that friend whom he appointed as economic advisor and who others suspect may be a drug lord. It's also came out that the high probability of money laundering being involved in the process. The mother company of the winning contractor was involved in securities fraud in Taiwan, as already stated. The indispensable cooperation of corrupt public officials in charge of the budget, and many others. The president himself defended those involved who were his appointees. One appointee who headed the government agency involved in the anomalies is in hiding, and the president has done nothing to have him found, despite the presidential promise that he will fire people even if just a whiff of corruption is exposed, and even issued a patently illegal order prohibiting those in the executive department, as I said, from appearing in the hearings conducted. With elections coming up next year, the president even threatened to campaign against those who were investigating. He even went into personally insulting the senators who were investigating. Worse, he threatened many in the Senate, myself primarily, and the Commission on Audit, an independent government agency that audits government expenditures, that made a preliminary report to ensure that the law is followed. As late as yesterday, the president again resorted to his bully pulpit, attacking myself and again calling us all kinds of personal attacks. In the face of this, what has our Senate decided to do? We went to court, so the order will be declared illegal and void. We're pretty confident about that. We did this despite the presence of more than a majority of the members of the court who are the appointees of the current president. We are confident that we will prevail. And most importantly, we did not stop with our investigations. We searched on despite the continuous diatribes, and the Senate as an institution, for we believe that the power to investigate is not merely an exercise of discretionary competence on the part of Congress. Rather, it is a duty imposed on us by the Constitution and by the people who elected us to public office. That's not only what we do, but also what we do not do, for which we are accountable. Democracies cannot abdicate the preservation of separation of powers. To do less is not only an abdication of our obligation, it is a betrayal of the trust imposed upon us when we were put to office. Thank you very much, and I'd like to be able to participate in the discussion later on.